soldier right in front of the voter. We got a big problem on our hands, America. We got to fight. We got to fight to get the taxes lowered, the gas prices lowered, food back on the table. And here in Common Sense America, we bring the truth to you. We are exposing what is happening in our election process, the lack of election integrity around this nation. We have got to fight to take back this country. I am Ethan Hill, and I'm so glad you will be here with us for this hour. We have a lot to talk about today. We are bringing to the show at 9:15 Sheriff Asa Buck for Carteret County. He is serving more than 70,000 citizens of Carteret County. He's going into his next term. We also have media strategist, also a contributor for Young Voices, Gabriella Hoffman. She'll be joining us at 9:30 as well. Now, we can take this country back. It was a red moon this morning, and it can be a red wave from New Hampshire down to Florida, to Pennsylvania, and also here in this great state of North Carolina. But as you notice, I'm standing here next to Rosie the Riveter. World War II. We fought and we won. This is what we need to do. We can do this, and we can take back this country. But I'm going to challenge you. If you didn't start off today in prayer, you need to stop for a second. Pray for our country. Pray for those who are serving. And pray that we get conservatives back in the Senate, in the House, in the State House, in the State Senate, and at the local level. Not Republicans in name only. We are about common sense, and a lot of things that Biden is putting out there don't make sense. A lot of things that Obama and Oprah are doing do not make sense. But I'll tell you what does make sense. The voice of the voters, and you have spoken. Make sure you get out and you vote today. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back. Good morning, my beautiful America. This is Common Sense America, and we are right here looking at the beautiful Intercoastal Waterway. I wanted to show you something beautiful because right now, if you don't get out and vote today, these waterways are going to look like the swamp of Washington, D.C. When I ran for State House in May, that's one of the biggest issues that I found that I wanted to expose through Common Sense America here on the radio, on the podcast, and on the TV show. These waters are being infested with Republicans in name only and with Democrats who are seeking to take back this country in an authoritarian way. We need to get out and vote. We need to stop sitting on our tuchuses and not doing anything. We may talk about it, we may worry about it, but if we don't take action and do something about it, the authoritarian state and the Democrats are going to take back this nation. Do you want that to happen? I don't. I want these beautiful waters of the Intercoastal Waterway here in eastern North Carolina to remain beautiful. Not going to the supermarket to get food from China. I would rather have fresh food here. So, I'm not going to rant all morning long. Today is election day. Raise the flag high. Talk to those who are running. I'll tell you what, I am from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and Guy Shiraki, who is running for Pennsylvania's House District 6, is out there and will be out there with his family and his parents, shaking hands, talking to the voter. So if you're in the great state of Pennsylvania, make sure you get out and vote. Polls don't close till late tonight. After this show, I will be going to vote. After this show, I will be going over and I will be writing in a lot of people. I am great. I am grateful that we, the people, still have a voice here in this United States of America. As we get ready for our next guest, we will be having Sheriff Buck join us for a few minutes just to talk about a couple things. To talk about law enforcement. This area is pro-law enforcement. We need to continue to support the men and women in blue. They are protecting us. They're protecting us here as a border state. And as you go and vote, remember, when you go to that ballot box, think about the men and women in blue who are protecting you. I know Nancy Pelosi doesn't think that anymore, even though they are, quote, protecting her, but she'd rather they not have guns. We've got to clean the swamp of Washington, and we've got to place great leaders. There are top 8 elections happening today. New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Florida. We have an amazing opportunity here to serve this nation. 1, as public servants, as 2, as citizens, and 3, as God-fearing Americans who want to keep this country safe, who believe in the United States of America, not China. On that note, I want to leave you with the beautiful water in mind as you go and vote today. Remember, crystal clear Emerald Isle and Carteret County as you go and place your vote for Republican today. Republican, conservative Republicans. Not the swamp of Washington, D.C. You think of a swamp, think of Obama, think of Biden. Because that's what's happening right now. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing, Sheriff?
I'm doing fine. Hope you are.
I'm doing good, thank you. It's so nice.
Did you vote yet?
Okay, here we go. I am headed over to vote right after this show. And thank you so much for joining Common Sense America. I'm so glad to see you. Thank you so much for doing this. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Glad to be with you.
So tell me, what do you think? What are you hearing from the voters? What are you hearing on the streets of Carteret County? What are they saying to you? What is the sense? Do you feel a red wave here in Carteret County ahead of us? What are your thoughts?
We certainly have a lot of conservative voters in Carteret County to begin with, and they've all been watching the same television coverage and everything else that we've been watching for the past 2 years, and seeing all the things going on all across our nation that a lot of people that are minded like us don't particularly care for. And for the past 2 years, not just recently, we've been hearing a lot. And I think people are excited to have their chance to let their voice be heard today through the ballot box. And I do expect that there'll be a strong Republican wave um,
Yes.
that will present itself today, and will be borne out in the election results.
Yes. One thing I have admired about your work here in Carteret County is you recognize the state as a border state. You care about the people of Carteret County. You care about what is happening at the greater aspect of every state's now a border state, but especially North Carolina. North Carolina has seen a lot of changes. And one thing I really respect about your service is that you are seeking to protect our nation's backyard, especially as it comes to the human trafficking issues and making sure that we support our law enforcement. And that is something that has been a true testament to your service and your terms of being sheriff of Carteret County. Talk to me briefly about this fact that we are headed into 2023. We already know that Trump is probably going to be making a huge announcement next Tuesday. He's already saying what he's about to come out with. But what are things that you would love to see for this coming year that we can do to protect our borders here in North Carolina? And how can we, the citizens and the voters, help support the men and women of law enforcement? How can we be a better support and just engaging in the community that would then protect those who are coming in and helping those coming in? What can we do to be of service to our law enforcement?
Well, I mean, just generally being supportive of law enforcement in general. Oftentimes things get reported in the media, and only very little of the information is presented, which
Mhm.
oftentimes allows people to draw conclusions that aren't supported by fact. A lot of things that you see in the media nowadays are based on emotion. Here again, not based on facts. And sometimes people just, a lot of things really don't. There's more to the story, in other
Yeah,
words.
yeah.
And in immigration enforcement is one of those areas. Um, a few years ago, the immigration enforcement wasn't that much of a political issue, but over the past several years, it's become one. And it's been because of the liberal and progressives that are pushing this and basically trying to say that people are racist if they support immigration enforcement. Well, nothing can be further from the truth. And minority communities, speak out against illegal immigration,
Mhm.
especially people that live in our border areas. I mean, well, every state is a border state basically,
It
but
is.
obviously those states that are actually on the southern border and those communities,
Mhm.
I mean, they're just being overrun with people who are coming into this country illegally, have no ties to the community. They can do anything they want to there, and then leave. I mean, even right here in Carteret County, we've had situations where someone was victimized,
Mhm.
and then because the suspect has no ties to the community, they can just up and leave, and they don't have to go back to Mexico or another country.
Right.
They can disappear anywhere in the United States.
Mhm.
And, citizens, natural born citizens who are born here, or people who come here and are properly documented with our country, uh, those of us in law enforcement, we can find those people generally, even if they pick up and head to another state.
Mhm.
And if their criminal offenses are serious enough, we can have them extradited back to our state and our local criminal justice system so we can prosecute them. But it's harder to do that when you have people who come here illegally and nobody knows who they are. They have no ties to the community, and they're just somewhat free to do whatever they want to do. And then we have victims that are just left in the wake, and we
Right.
have people like myself and our deputies and our police officers who are charged with trying to get justice for our victims. And it's really kind of hard to do that when you have a federal government that won't take seriously
Exactly.
enforcing our immigration laws. And then you have local politicians and then other local folks who want to make it harder as well. And even unfortunately, you have some law enforcement folks that don't want to honor detainers. Just recently there was a deputy sheriff who was killed in Wake County, and he was killed by two individuals who had been in the country illegally and had had prior contact with law enforcement. That opportunity to come across that deputy never should have even occurred.
Right.
Because they shouldn't even have been in the country.
Right.
And we talk about how these people, present danger to our law enforcement officers, but they also present a danger to the people that we're sworn to protect and serve, and that's our citizens.
Exactly.
But you don't hear that reported in the media.
No. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, we met when I was running for state house in the primary, and Common Sense America was born out of the fact that I knew there was a lot that needed to be exposed and a lot of truth that needed to be told. And Common Sense America is really about God, country, and family. And it is really about talking about what the media is not talking about and exposing that truth. And I'll tell you what, from all the different candidates from all around the nation that have joined this show, and it's been around for about 2 months now, in that I'm grateful for the public servants like you, the public servants like those. We had just last week, Shane Hernandez, who's the running mate for Tudor Dixon, who's running for Michigan. And we were talking about what is happening even in that state and how Ford is removing itself and all of these things that are happening within the conservative base, but the media is not talking about it. The media would rather talk about Nancy Pelosi and her husband and the crime that happened. And, I'm not going to put you on the spot with that question just because I think that story has become so distorted on so many different levels and you're hearing so many different things. But one thing I do want to ask you, and this is something that is more near and dear to my heart, and that is New York City. I lived there for so long, and I have so many friends who are NYPD officers. But at the end of the day, I'm starting to see more and more of them say, you know what, enough is enough. We can't take this anymore. The aspect of what is happening there. And it's the criminals that are taking over the city. So let me ask you this. When it comes to our cities around the nation and the law enforcement aspect there, what is it going to take to get that type of crime under control and to say, you know what, hey, my friend here, A, and my friend here, B, we are all supporting you to get back on those streets, to defend our cities, to protect our cities, to protect our citizens. What's it going to take for that to flip? Is it a red wave or is it something different?
Well, and it's not just one election. In a lot of these cities, I mean, look, elections have consequences.
Yes.
And the people get what they vote for.
Mm-hmm.
The people who live in these cities and in some of these other counties, they need to, if public safety is important to them, then they need to start supporting elected officials.
Mm-hmm.
So those are sheriffs, county commissioners, town councilmen, who appoint chiefs of police and the like. They need to start electing people that are serious about enforcing the laws and holding criminals accountable and protecting victims and protecting the general public. Here again, over the past, and there was a time when law enforcement wasn't political, like it's become nowadays.
Right.
And the Democrat Party has been hijacked by the liberals and progressives, And it seems like that if the Democrats don't go along with the liberal and progressive wing, then I guess they paint them as racists and
Mm-hmm.
homophobes and everything else that they try to portray conservatives and Republicans. So I guess they kind of feel like they had to go along with that. Um, and for the past several years, they've tried to make law enforcement out to be racist because of a number of officer-involved shootings around our country, and that could be a much longer conversation
Right.
in that regard. But and the national media has just done such a disservice by
Yes.
running on a lot of that misinformation. And so what people need to do is they need to start voting for people who are going to hold criminals accountable and protect the public, and not just pandering to a small group of people who seem to be loud and vocal, who are trying to make something out of nothing. And here again, the liberals and progressives, they have to base everything on emotion, not actual information and fact. And a lot of what they do is push this race card.
Mm-hmm.
And look at the Republican Party today. Look at the candidates that are in the last election, in the current election.
Yes.
The Republican Party is the big tent party.
Yes.
The Republican Party and most of the minorities are socially conservative people,
Mm-hmm.
Hispanics, yes. Blacks, and so the Republican Party is really where people need to start gravitating towards if they want to protect this country, protect American values, and protect the public and public safety. Because you look in these other places, I mean, in some of these other cities where they already have these no bail policies, which people are trying to push in North Carolina, by the way, Democrats, not elected Democrats, not Republicans. Just look and see how well things are going in New York. And then you look at Chicago and see how bad things have been there for a long time. And they're just now starting to go to this no bail policy for criminals who are arrested. Now, do you think that's going to reduce the gun violence that they're seeing in their communities? And I mean, their mayor's up there doing TikTok videos of singing and dancing and doing whatever. And meanwhile, they got the gangs and the criminals and the thugs running wild in the streets, killing people.
Right.
And the thing that kills me about that really, I mean, it just really gets my goat when they're talking about law enforcement and minority communities. Who do they think is being victimized in these communities?
Right. That's exactly it.
And so if it's minorities that are breaking the laws in these communities, who are they victimizing? They're victimizing the same people who live in those communities, in those minorities.
Yes, they are.
They say, you shouldn't enforce immigration detainers, and they don't want immigration enforcement because it separates families and, all these other things. Well, what happens when a natural born citizen breaks a law and commits a criminal offense serious enough to put him or her in jail or to put him or her in prison? Right. Well, does that not separate families?
Right.
Well, yeah, it may, but you're removing the criminal element from society so they don't victimize other people.
Right.
So, I'm just sick to death of all this racial aspect being put into criminal justice and law enforcement. But it's the liberals and the progressives that keep pushing this. And that's their only talking points for anything. They don't have any real solutions.
Right.
They try to paint people as being something bad, and that nothing can be further from the truth.
Right. Well, it goes all along with the diversity, equity, and inclusion training, the woke training that is infiltrating in our United States military and also in this culture that they're trying to invoke. And honestly, I mean, our recruitment levels have been the lowest since 1940 because of that. And it's not doing anything but harming our nation, harming our homeland, and also harming our backyards. On that note, we are about to take a quick break to bring over my fun political analysis for the rest of the show. And I wanted to ask you just a final note here at Common Sense America. As we head into tomorrow and everybody takes a deep breath now that the election has kind of come to a relaxation before we really hit 2024. What is one thing that you would just love to just say to the people of Carteret County and just all of the support that they've given you over these years? We're just honored to have you as our sheriff, but is there one thing you'd love to say to Carteret County as everybody is tuning in this morning?
Thank you, and I love you.
That's simple enough.
I'm born and raised right here in the county. Beaufort's my hometown, and I'm just so honored to be the sheriff of all the people. And I know I'm somewhat ideological and political in some aspects, but the sheriff is the sheriff of everybody. And so Republican, Democrat, independent, whether you don't vote at all,
Mm-hmm.
Our sheriff's office serves everybody. I have my own political affiliation and ideology, and I think that supports my role as the elected public safety and law enforcement representative in this county, especially nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
with the way things are. But I'm somewhat political, but I'm not 100% political, and I believe in serving everybody to the best of our ability through this office.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just so honored to have the support of the people of Carteret County.
Well, we look forward to supporting you, and I look forward to checking the ballot box once I leave this show and head over to my little area to vote. But Sheriff Buck, thank you so much for being here at Common Sense America. I'd like to have you back after the election to really break down some of the more of the border issues. There's a lot more to talk about that, and I know there's going to be a lot on the table. So we would love to have you back here at Common Sense America, and we just wish you many blessings today, and thank you so much for your service.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And for all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill. And I tell you what, we are just enjoying this election day. I have been out. We went over to a couple of the gas stations, went down to the boulevard. We were just talking. And we also went over to the Intercoastal Waterway. So I'm a little sweaty, a little, I need a little powder. But you know what? This is not a perfect show. But we are talking about the issues that are facing the American people, that are facing the American public as they go out and cast their ballots today. And so I'm grateful to have Sheriff Asa Buck join the show this morning for a few minutes to talk about Carteret County and its citizens. And now I absolutely love the young voices and all the amazing commentators and contributors they bring to the table. And this morning, I'm bringing over Gabriella Hoffman. She is returning to the show. She is an avid fisherwoman, which I absolutely love about her. But we're also just going to be talking about the top 8 races that are hitting this nation today and what do we see on the horizon in the coming weeks. And I'm sincerely saying the coming weeks, because we are being told by the national media that it may be weeks until we know some of these races. So I would love to invite my dear friends and audience to join us in welcoming Gabriella Hoffman. Good morning, ma'am. How are you this morning? Oh, hold on a second. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Good to join you again.
It's okay. It's okay. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm a little hot, a little sweaty. We've been out talking to different people, capturing some images of the gas prices, talking about the kitchen table, talking about our intercoastal waterways, which I know you're very familiar with, and wanting to keep them clean and not the swamps of Washington, D.C. And, I wanted just to kind of get your analysis in. We are here on election day, and Daily Signal put out this morning about the top 8 races to be watching. But my first question to you is this: do you think we're actually going to know the winners tomorrow morning for Pennsylvania, for Arizona? What are your thoughts? Because I'm hearing a lot of different statements. We're not going to know for days, maybe even weeks.
I would hope those statements are incorrect. I think some people may be saying that just to depress the vote. Mm-hmm. Perhaps they're nervous about record turnout, so they want to say, okay, there may be too many people coming to vote, might as well process these later. But I really don't want to focus in on that. I think we will know most of the results, hopefully, if not all the results, but majority of the results. We'll have an idea where control falls in both the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. I think if it's a record turnout that has been undercounted by pollsters and commentators, I think we could very well know pretty easily. Some we've seen Fetterman want to perhaps stall the election counting further. He has filed lawsuits, and I think the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has said that that challenge will not be honored, if I read the report correctly.
Yes.
So I think, like I said, it depends on turnout. People don't know how many voters are going to be turning out, if it's going to be higher than usual, higher than predicted. I think we just have to wait and see with respect to that. But in this country, it should be easy to know the victors within a timely fashion. I think you see that across both Democrats and Republicans, and the people who are not instilling confidence in voting are doing a disservice to America's voters. So we should know. And I would hope that we do know the majority of the results. And I think we will.
Yes. Well, let me mention this to you. And this is not a national news story. This is friends calling me from a different state, a state that I love very much. And they said, my husband took over his ballot. It was already signed, sealed, delivered, ready to put in the ballot box because he knew he wasn't going to have very much time to go in and literally vote this morning. And the poll watcher took it and ripped it in front of him. And I don't know what to say to that. And I said, okay, let me break this down. Let me make sure I got your story right, because I don't want you to depict it in the wrong way. But that is it in a nutshell. Let me ask you something. One, when a poll watcher takes your ballot that's been signed and sealed and ready to be delivered and rips it in half, that's illegal. That's illegal, correct? That's an offense, correct?
I'm not a lawyer, but to my understanding, I think that would be an offense. You can't do that, especially if the person has followed all the laws. So they should report it to the election commission in their county if they haven't already. That's my understanding. I know some of those instances do occur, and they need to immediately report that if that's the case, because sometimes that does happen, unfortunately. I don't think that's going to largely define most voters, but certainly I hope they recorded that act of them doing that and do report that immediately. But I think enthusiasm is high, and I think we are even seeing Republicans returning actually in big numbers. Early voting. I voted early in person because I'm not sure what it is, what I'm doing this week. I'm self-employed, so I need to vote early because I could have some meetings. Today it's kind of busy, so I wanted to vote ahead of time just to not get lost. Plus, there was only the congressional seat race contest open in my neck of Virginia, so I didn't have much to vote for. But I was happy to cast my vote against Don Beyer, who's potentially compromised with one of his recently fired staffers. But that's besides the point.
Sure.
But Republicans, even if they don't like early absentee voting or early in-person voting, they are showing up to do these early voting means.
Yes.
And we have to look, let's say Miami-Dade, Palm Beach County, Orange County, Florida. I've looked to see that recently. And we see that Republican turnout exceeds Democrat turnout in Miami-Dade County for early voting. That's very impressive. So if we can nail that game, which I think Republicans will do, because some states you can't overcome that unless it, the state legislature changes, it back to a not relying on a mail-in ballot or absentee ballot only type or leaning type of vote. But I think Republicans are going to use and exhaust any means: early in person, vote day of, mail-in ballot, because they know what's at stake if there's not a check on this administration. And I think you see increasingly a lot of people want divided government. We saw even Elon Musk chime in, the new Twitter owner. He said, as an independent himself, and he's kind of caught some hot water. He's in hot water for these comments. I don't know if they broach inappropriate or if he's supposedly meddling in elections. I don't think so, because you see Democrat owners and employees of Twitter in the past always saying, please vote Democrat. So, I think that they're whatabouting and they're not being consistent, and they don't like it that someone as prominent as Elon Musk, the world's richest man, telling people to vote for Republicans for House and Senate and governor's races because he wants divided government. I think most people want divided government. Even people on the center left want divided government. And I think I went on Fox 5 DC last night, and I was talking about how it's not just Republicans who are voting for Republican candidates. I look here in Virginia with what our elections were last year. We had people, independents, and a sizable number of Democrats cross party lines to vote for my now governor, Glenn Youngkin. And we're going to see that same kind of crossover with people who are not traditionally Republican voters, because they're personally affected by all these inflation policies, higher gas prices, concerned about education.
Yes.
So I think a lot of commentators, even though I'm a conservative and I would like the Republicans to win, I could even see beyond my partisan lens that there are people who don't agree with us who are wanting to give Republicans a chance. And a lot of people are missing that.
Mhm.
And Republicans are going to have to learn how to navigate, appealing to those voters. It doesn't mean compromising your conservative values, but people are looking for limited government,
Yes.
low tax,
Yes. Yes.
individual type policies where people are not going to be burdened and they're not going to have, their rights infringed upon, their livelihoods at stake. So I think even a semblance of conservative values is starting to be felt by people who would not traditionally vote for Republicans.
Mhm.
And so if we expect, let's say, the best case scenario for Republicans in both the House and the Senate,
Mhm.
will President Biden moderate? I don't think so. I think he is very much embedded in his leftward lurch. He's being instructed to do that. If he does turn around and moderate, I would be shocked. But that's just the nature of politics today. Everything is super partisan. So you don't expect party leaders to moderate their tone, especially on the left. So that's kind of my assessment of it. But we can break down the races, the top 8 races.
Oh, let's break them down. I've been dying to do this with you all day. Okay, let's do my favorite. Let's do Fetterman Oz first. Let's break that one down first.
Yes, the Real Clear Politics average has started to show Oz leading. And there was, I think, 538 came out with their betting odds. And they found that Oz has a 57 out of 100 chance of winning. We had not seen that before. And if that's their final metric, that may be a very good sign for Dr. Oz. And I think Pennsylvania could be decided on a narrow margin. I think that's what it is. And it'll likely favor Oz if we do see Pennsylvanians and even suburban Philadelphia residents and Pittsburgh residents pull the lever for Oz because they don't have confidence in Fetterman to perform, given his health issues and also his extreme positions.
Yes.
For even Pennsylvania, it does have a history of electing Democrats, largely more centrist Democrats, but he's even too far to the left for many Pennsylvanians.
Yes.
I've traveled to Pennsylvania on numerous occasions. I have fished in Pennsylvania. I kind of know the area a little bit, talking to friends. I can't say I'm an expert, of course, but it's very similar to Virginia, rather, in many ways. You have a lot of rural outposts.
Yes,
it's
you
certainly
do.
more urbanized than Virginia, but I think people will see that Fetterman's crime policies, which would allow hardened criminals who shouldn't be out on the streets to be released, I think that's top of mind for voters. They see that he would be a rubber stamp for the Green New Deal, for high tax, big spending bills, a rubber stamp for President Biden. And like I said, I think the debate that they had between each other highlighted a lot of flaws and a lot of shortcomings for Fetterman. And it's unfortunate he suffered a stroke, and we wish him well and we hope he recovers. But being a senator is a very important task. And if you can't meet the demands of the job, it's a very taxing position.
Yes,
you have to debate. You're expected to go on TV. You have to host meet and greets. You have to host town halls. You have to be able to engage in robust debate. And Democrats were fine when former Illinois Senator Mark Kirk suffered a stroke, and they said, okay, it's time for him to go, and we have to have Tammy Duckworth come in. And I'm not trying to what about here, but in his case, he seems to be really struggling, and he was trying to reassure voters, well, I'm going to be healthy by January. People don't want to know where you're going to be by January. Are you up to the task today?
Now, right, exactly.
So I think Oz will carry it over, perhaps by a slimmer margin than most of us would like him to, but I expect that he would if he sold his message well to Pennsylvanians and they see Fetterman for who he is.
Okay, second favorite state, Florida. So I had my campaign manager, previous campaign manager here last night. We were talking about Kristen and DeSantis. And I love America's governor. I respect America's governor. He's an amazing, amazing public servant, and his wife as well. So her comment was this, and since Chris was already governor years ago, what do we say if it is a slim margin? When DeSantis wins, but a slim margin versus a huge gap. And the bigger concern is, would he win by a slim margin? That would be the bigger concern because of all the things that he's done in the great state of Florida. So the question is there election integrity issues going to be surfacing with the fact that if he, wins by such a slim margin, where in reality, he really should win by a large margin?
I think he's projected to win by a large margin. Like I had referenced in our earlier conversation, or just earlier on this segment, rather.
Yeah.
Miami-Dade early
Yes.
voting shows
Yes.
Republicans with a 6,000 vote plus advantage.
Mhm.
And we have never seen that before. So I expect in-person voting to be probably a wider margin. This is the first time a lot of forecasters say that Miami-Dade County is going to pull the lever for Republicans
Mhm.
for the governor's race and also for the Senate contest.
Mhm.
So I don't see Governor DeSantis winning by a slim margin like he did when he was first elected governor. I think he's in a comfortable lead because there is a now, I think, net 300,000 vote advantaging Republicans statewide. It was previously a negative 500,000 vote difference between Democrats and Republicans. Democrats used to have the lead prior to him being governor. So he has done a lot as a campaigner and as a governor to win over people
Yes.
and have them register for his party, for the Republican Party of Florida. And so I'm not worried about his prospects. I think he will handily beat Charlie Crist because he's the same old, same old. He was governor. He switched his political stripes, and that doesn't instill confidence in Floridians. And I think a lot of people, even some Democrats in Florida, like what he's doing for Everglades restoration, for Hurricane Ian relief efforts.
Yes. Yes.
And they like that he kept Florida largely open for much
Yes.
of the pandemic. So I think he's going to win comfortable. So I don't think we have to worry so much about a slim margin because that 2018 was a difficult year for Republicans. This is a whole different scenario. Like I said, the election numbers favor him. More people are registered Republican now in Florida. And if Miami-Dade, even early indicators show that Republicans are leading even by a slim margin, in that really traditionally deep blue county, I think he's well positioned. Same with Marco Rubio.
Okay, perfect. I love that one. Let's talk about Kari Lake. Let's talk about Arizona. What does that look like? Do you think it's going to be pretty slim with that one?
I have seen some interesting numbers. So initially, I wasn't sure she was going to be competitive because she was kind of campaigning on old issues. And some people had thought she was extreme. But the more I started to watch her and see her command of the media and the issues she was starting to campaign, she kind of won me over stylistically, rhetorically.
Yeah.
And the fact that her challenger refused to debate her was a very interesting indictment. And I think Arizonans who were kind of reprimanding the former president for insulting John McCain, and that unfortunately did play a factor in why Arizona went blue.
Yeah.
Arizona is contrarian. It does lean Republican. It's a historically conservative state, Barry Goldwater, of course, with that history. And I think people saw what happened when Arizona went blue. Not so much statewide because they have a great Republican governor in Doug Ducey, but they were very upset by the results in 2020. And Kari Lake was able to tap into something very unique. You don't have to agree with all her positions. I don't necessarily agree with some of her positions, but she has proven on the important issues like protecting school choice. Arizona just enshrined into law one of the best school choice items, scholarships, the ESA scholarship. And she wants to continue that. So she may win over people who were not previously in support of her. And with her opponent, the Secretary of State, floundering and refusing to debate her, the polls have started to actually go in Kari Lake's direction as governor. I think she could win by maybe 2, 3, 4 percentage points because her opponent has just said abortion, 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 democracy, democracy, democracy. And she hasn't really put up a contrast. And she's been pretty cringe. So I think even Arizona's voters who tend to be contrarian at times, even though it is a historically Republican state in most instances, I think it could go in her favor. I think her being a well-known media figure, she was in one of the biggest media markets in Phoenix. So people do remember her, even if they don't agree with her, and they see that perhaps she is better tasked with leading Arizona going forward. So I think that'll be a state to watch. And I think hopefully she will be able to govern and transition into that pretty well and have good advisors who will keep her focused and keep on building up from what Arizona has accomplished, because Arizona has been a leading state under Doug Ducey's leadership. I think a lot of people were mad at him over 2020, and tried to, denounce him, but he's a very stalwart conservative guy when you look at his accomplishments. So she has to continue what he has put into place there. And I think the voters see that. I think actually her prospects are slightly more improved than Blake Masters, because that's a little more toss up. And we can talk about that race too, but I think he's closing the gap but I think the governor's race, she will probably, if she wins, and even if he wins by a narrow margin, I think he will ride off her coattails. I think she is the one who could help carry him across the line if people have doubts.
Well, also, let's talk about one election I'm really following very closely has been Michigan. And we had Shane Hernandez, who's the running mate for Teeter Dixon, on last week. So what are your thoughts on Dixon Hernandez and the whole Whitmer campaigning. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it looks close, but have you
It's a
seen
toss-up.
differently? Yes.
I've seen some polling kind of all over the map. So some showing it a toss-up, some showing it with a Whitmer narrow lead. But
Mhm.
I think Michigan could be very much like Virginia. Governor Whitmer actually was a pretty bad COVID responder. She
Yes,
had kept
very.
her state under lockdowns. I remember from a outdoor perspective, she had shut off access to boating, but only her husband can go boating in the marina when it was really
Yes, I remember
kind of a
that.
dangerous time.
I
And
remember that. Yeah.
she comes off as an elitist. She had a very poor track record in responding to COVID, oversaw the nursing home calamity in Michigan. And you look recently in the most recent weeks, education has become a top of mind issue. You see the Muslim community of Dearborn, Michigan coming out against reimagining education and putting all these inappropriate books out there for students. And that isn't a traditionally Republican voting bloc. They are conservative on social issues, but they tend to vote for Democrats. But they were ostracizing Rashida Tlaib and Debbie Dingell for putting that material or supporting that material, especially at the local level, not responding to it. So I think she has tapped into something interesting. Can she close the gap? I think most people can assume she would. It depends how well her ground game was in Michigan. But I think Michigan, like any state that has a potential to flip, can do so. I think, like I said, in Virginia, we had a very, very, not a super draconian COVID response from our former Democratic governor, but it was pretty bad. And I think Michigan's was a lot worse. So if the people were very disoriented and dismayed by what she did under COVID with the closures, keeping schools closed for an extended period of time, kind of her lurch to the far left, and just being a rubber stamp for President Biden, I think she could possibly lose her job if Tudor Dixon was able to make the case, her and her running mate. But I think Michigan, of any of the Great Lakes states, I think could have the best likelihood of flipping. Possibly Wisconsin too. I've seen some numbers go in that candidate's favor against Tony Evers. And maybe Minnesota. I don't know. Minnesota is always kind of a sticky point for me because it has a potential to flip. And I know people in Minnesota. I have a good friend of mine, a former employee of mine, is a state senator. She's a great person. I think she could have a future in Minnesota politics. And you see what's happening there. They were affected by, obviously, the riots of 2020, COVID closures, economic malaise. So maybe the Great Lakes could surprise us today, but I think Michigan will surprise us the most if it goes in Republicans' favor.
Yeah, that would be, I know it'd be an absolute blessing. Let's talk about Tiffany Smiley. I absolutely adore her background. I really respect her background, and I just love how she is rising. What are your thoughts on that one?
She's a very fascinating character, and her personal story of helping her husband, who is totally blind, and raising her 3 kids. It's an inspiration, regardless of where you fall on the political aisle. And her dedication to her husband and family is very admirable. And her professional accomplishments are pretty impressive too. It's really interesting that the Washington Senate race started to become, among conservatives, very competitive, and it's made a lot of Democrats very nervous. Patty Murray, to me, is a rubber stamp for President Biden. And as it concerns freelancers, she was the Senate champion of the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, the PRO Act, which would displace upwards of 59 million freelancers. I would personally like to see her taken out if we can't help it, because she is supporting legislation that will hurt small business owners, one-person businesses, franchise businesses. And I hope, and I'm going to write something at Town Hall about how Republicans have to protect freelancers, because that's 36% of the workforce. But I think I would personally like to see her deposed because of what she is doing there. And that issue should take off more. But I think Washingtonians have had enough of her governance. She's been there for 3 decades now? And she hasn't improved the quality of life. She's only just, advanced far left positions. And people in Washington state are hurting. I have an aunt and uncle that live in Vancouver, Washington, right across the Portland border. And they would like to see change. I don't know if Tiffany Smiley will be able to flip the seat. If she does, that is going to be incredible. She's a great candidate, and if she loses, maybe it's just not the right state to run in. But if she comes even close, that's very fascinating there. But she would be, I think that type of a candidate would be good for those bluish states going forward. She can, if she loses narrowly this time, maybe she'll run again next time and win, even with a slim majority. Or if she stuns political observers and forecasters and somehow manages to win, that would be incredible, like I said. But I don't know. Washington may be hard to overcome because it is so advantaged for Democrat voters. But if independent voters which I think make up a sizable number of the voting bloc there, do come swinging for her, and every Republican votes for her too, and even some Democrats. She has said she has tried to capture some Democratic voters. Perhaps she could pose a serious challenge to Patty Murray. So we'll see. That race is going to come out later than for most of us. Then they're on the West Coast, we're on the East Coast, so we may not know initial reading into it if they're going to make early calls for that, because, like I said, it is advantage to Democratic voters more given just the political inclination and leanings of that state. But that could be an interesting state to watch. I don't know. I can't forecast if she'll win, but at least she'll give Patty Murray a run for her money.
Well, you know what? She really already has. She's just been a phenomenal human to watch. I receive her press releases daily, and I just love hearing her story and just the drive, the zeal, and what she brings to the platform. And even if for some reason she doesn't, she has an amazing future ahead of her. And the eyes are all on her in many, many ways. So I just really respect and admire her. We have a little less than a minute left. Final thoughts altogether, final statements on today's election day.
I think Republicans are projected to win in big numbers. I don't know if it's a tsunami level type victory, but I started to see even lefty forecasters like Larry Sabato's crystal ball say that Republicans will hold the House, I think, close to 230 seats, and at minimum 51 seats of 100 at the worst case scenario. It could be better. We have to see how New Hampshire, even Colorado, how they perform, because those are also in play too, especially New Hampshire is really in play. I was really excited to see that, because it's the live free or die state. It's a libertarian state. They shouldn't have to, settle with Maggie Hassan. But I think at minimum, Republicans will have a good night. If I'm wrong, we can come on again and talk about it. But I think the trends point to it. Like I said, it's not just Republicans who are voting for center right candidates. You even have independents, big time, going to the bat for Republicans, and a sizable number of Democrats. So if all those three voting blocks do turn out for Republicans, Democrats are going to have a very bad night.
On that note, I love it how you just ended it. On that note, here at Common Sense America, we love having Young Voices contributor, media strategist, town hall contributor, writer, Gabriella Hoffman. You can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at Gabby_Hoffman. I just love having you here and your political analysis. Thank you for breaking it down. And you know what, if you are available tomorrow for like 5 minutes to break down the post election night, I'll reach out to Anders. I'd love to have you back. But thank you so much, Gabby. Have a fabulous election day, and I'll hopefully see you tomorrow. Have a great day.
Same to you. Rest easy.
Thanks, Gabby. All right.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye. And for all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. Wow, what a fabulous election day we have kicked off. And also behind the scenes, I just want to say thank you to Salikas Gonzalez. She is my faithful, faithful friend, military spouse, virtual executive assistant, and who has been helping behind the scenes. She helped me film over at the gas station with the kitchen table topics, and also down by the Intercoastal Waterway. And now we are headed to go vote. So get out there and vote. God bless America. Let's take this country back. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks. Have a great day.